Okay people, so let's begin our tutorial. Before we go to Photoshop, we will need to go into the internet and get some different textures, some different ground cover textures, and you'll have to make sure to use seamless textures. Why? This doesn't mean that you cannot make a seamless texture in Photoshop, but that will imply a little bit extra work. So for this case, we are going to look for actual seamless textures. I personally looked for a dirt texture like the one you're looking at the moment. I would also like to use maybe some grass textures. This is not a seamless texture. I will probably not use this one. And maybe, oh look at this one. This is a seamless texture of the grass, which I will probably use, and a dried grass layer too. So make sure you have at least 3 different seamless textures, and let's load this in Photoshop, and I'll see you there. Okay, so I hope you guys are following along. I'm already in Photoshop, and I already loaded up the images that I'm going to be using to create the textures. So as you see here, I loaded up 3 different images that are going to be used to create 3 different textures. So as you can see here, I have a dead grass layer, I have a green grass layer, and last but not least, I have a dirt layer. So the reason I asked you before to look for seamless textures was because we're going to be using each of these images to create a gigantic tile to create the final texture of the terrain. The reason to do that is not only because if you use this, the resolution is going to look bad, but also because, as you can see here, although this is a fantastic image, the scale will be completely wrong because this is a close-up shot of the terrain. So we need to shrink this image out and multiply it across the whole surface. Okay, so for the sake of the tutorial, I'm not going to be doing any of these images over here. I'm just going to show you how to make it with the first texture, so you can do the same thing with as many textures as you want. And okay, so let's begin with this process. The first step will be to increase the size of the canvas. So let's come here to image, canvas size, and we can make this a 5K texture, but honestly I will prefer to have a 10K texture. Okay, so let's do it the right way. So now that our canvas is gigantic, as you can see here, the next step will be, let's select the texture, okay, and let's shrink it out a little bit. Okay, you don't have to be precise about this. Let's look at the picture. Okay, so now in order to clone this image throughout the whole canvas, we just selecting the layer where the image is. You are just going to press Alt in your keyboard and click and drag the image. So the image is going to snap to the edge of the original image, and a new copy is going to be created. Now, Photoshop, for some reason, has this little fading edge in every image, and That is a big problem because if you have a close-up shot of the texture, you're going to see this little weird seam over here. So to solve this, we just have to click and drag the new image so that we don't get that seam anymore. Okay, and now we have to repeat this process up until we fill the whole thing, but I'm going to show you a little shortcut for this. So let's clone this one up. Okay, just move the image over there. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to pause the video a little bit so you don't have to watch me doing this over and over and over, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I completed, let's call it the first row, and it's looking pretty nice. We don't seem to have any weird seams, but there's a little problem. We have a bunch of layers over here that we don't want and we don't need. So what we're going to do is to mix all these images in a single image. So to do that, you just have to select the whole canvas by pressing Ctrl A, and then you press Ctrl Shift Z. Now let's create a new layer, and we're going to copy everything over there. So we just press Ctrl V, and a completely new row is going to appear. So we don't need this anymore. Can get rid of all these layers. So now let's pull this one up. I know we're going to do the same process, but now we have a larger image, so we don't have to go cloning one and one and one and one image. So let's clone this one. Okay, and we're going to make sure we don't have that weird seam over here. As you can see, I have the seam, so I'm going to push this one up a little bit so I don't have that anymore. And I'm going to keep cloning this until I fill the whole canvas. So once again, I'm going to pause the video and I'll come back to you once I clone everything. Okay, so I clone my textures over and over, and I finally filled the whole canvas. Now we're going to do the same process because we don't want any of these extra layers over here. So once again, you just press Ctrl A to select every layer, then you press Ctrl Shift C to copy all the layers, and we're going to create a completely new layer, and we're going to paste the image over there. So okay, now I have it, so I can get rid of these extra layers, and now I have a gigantic tile with the seamless texture we downloaded from the internet. From this point of view, you can see that there is some repetition over here, but we're going to take care of that later because it is actually not going to be visible with the way we're going to handle the texture of the whole terrain. Okay, so now you can do this same process, follow the same process, and do the same thing with the other two images. And once you finish that, I'll see you back here in Photoshop. Well, I hope you guys are following along. I already have my 10K textures over here. I follow the same process that I showed you before with the green grass layer and the dry grass layer. So the last thing we need in order to create the final texture is to load up the displacement texture we created in the last tutorial. So just create a new layer and look for the displacement image we created before. Now, originally this image was a 5K texture, so it's half the size of the canvas we're currently working on. So just make sure that when you load up the image, change the scale so it actually will fit the size of our current canvas. So I just scaled this one up 200%, and now it fits perfectly in our workspace. Let's make sure we can modify this image. And now the way we're going to go about this is that we are going to distribute these images or these textures depending on the height of the displacement map. So for instance, I want the dirt layer to be covering the river path, right? And I want the green grass layer to be covering the top of the mountains. So we're going to use the color range selection to pick specific tones of color, and depending on that we will distribute these textures. So I know it sounds a bit confusing, but you just follow along and you'll get the sense of what we're working on. Okay, so select the displacement map layer. Let's go to the select options and pick color range. So we're going to sample from the bottom of the river because I want this dirt layer to be at the bottom of the river. I want to increase the, let's say, the fuzziness of it, and I'm going to say OK here. Now I have a selection based on this color range. Now I'm going to turn off the displacement. Let's select the layer we're going to be working on and just delete the selection. Now there's something weird here. The selection is inverted, so let's undo this. Let's invert the selection, and now we can actually delete what we have. Okay, so I feel really comfortable with this one. Let's deselect and turn on once again the displacement map. Now I'm gonna do a similar process to distribute the gray grass layer. Okay, so let's turn on the displacement map. Let's go to select color range, and I'm going to sample a gray color. Well, I feel comfortable with the way it's looking at the moment. I'm going to invert this selection because we had this problem before and we can solve it right away from here. So I inverted the selection. Now we can go to the dry grass layer and delete the selection. Okay. Now we're not going to do that same process with the green grass layer because we already have some colors distributed from the previous layers. Maybe the only thing we need to do is to organize this layer the proper way. So I'm going to pull the dirt layer to the top, and I'm going to put the gray grass layer in the middle. So now we have a nice distribution of these colors. Now I don't like the way it's looking up here, right? So I'm just going to select the eraser tool, and I want to show a little bit more of the green that is going to be underneath. So that's the way you go about this. I'm going to do the same thing over here because I want to show a little bit more green. And now I feel really comfortable with the way this is looking at the moment. So I'm gonna save this image out. It can be saved as a JPEG, and once you save the image, open up Lightwave , and I'll see you there. Alright, so we're in Lightwave now. We're about to finish this tutorial, so let's load up the terrain object we created before. And we're going to apply a specific material to it. So let's press Q to get the change surface option. Let's call this one terrain. Make sure it's a smooth material. And now we're going to load up the texture or the image we just created in Photoshop. So open up the surface editor, make sure you have your terrain material selected, and open up the texture editor for the terrain material. I'm gonna shut this one down, and I'm gonna move this so you can see what's going on. We're going to be projecting the texture from the y-axis. Let's automatic size this. Let's look for the texture. Okay, it's loading up, and now we have it. So we finally applied the material we created in Photoshop, and as you can see, every texture is being applied depending on the altitude of the displacement. Okay, so in our next tutorial we'll be taking a look on how to create basic bump maps, specularity maps, and diffuse maps using the images we already have. So I hope to see you guys there. If you have any questions, just let me know, please. And well, see you next time.